Hi friends, welcome to the channel. My name is Christina, and today we're going to talk about Adalo, which is a no-code app that you can use to build your own little app for your company, your process, your system, and you can do all of this without writing a single line of code. Today's video is going to be an introductory video into how to get started using Adalo. So on the left side here, you will notice a series of icons. And so from the top is the plus icon, a color palette, a few screens, a spreadsheet looking icon, and a cogwheel, as well as two check marks and what looks like a little graph. So this in order is branding, screens, database, settings, publishing, and analytics. And so let's go through each one of these. For branding, you can start by creating your primary color, secondary color palette, and making sure that every single screen is on brand. Then you'll notice here there's another toggle for fonts, and that brings you into their font selection. Now, if you're using the paid option, you can use all of the fonts down here. If you are not paying for it and you're just trying it out, then the standard font will be perfectly fine to start with. But the option to use the really nice fonts is definitely a plus if you are on the pro plan. Now, coming into these screens, this is where you will access all of the screens that you have on the app. Now, this is a template that you get to start with when you first come into the app. So, of course, you will always have a welcome screen, a sign up and a login screen, as well as a home page and an account page. So the home page is basically the page that you will start with when you log into the app. So this is always going to be the first screen that someone sees, and the welcome screen is the first screen that they see when they come onto the app without signing in. So there's those two differences that you just want to make sure you know. And you can always select or create a new page and screen for that. And then you can just make sure to select it as a welcome or a home screen. Now, whenever you want to add a new screen, you can just go here to the plus sign and add screen, and you can kind of use any of their templates to add, or you can just create one from blank if you already have your screens designed the way you wanted. So there's a lot of ways that you can use Adalo to get started really quickly. It's really nice to kind of follow along their template until you get really good at making your own screen and then creating your own screens. So that's one place to start. The next thing that you can do is whenever you have a screen is add a component. Each one of these elements are a component, and so you can have text, images, forms, an app bar, a symbol list, or a button. But if you scroll down, you'll notice there's a list of other items that you can place into the app. You have the tab bar, the app bar. So the tab bar is the bottom bar, and then the app bar is the top bar. So that's the difference. And then you have a series of different ways you can kind of list information. So you have your simple list, your card list, your horizontal card list, and your avatar list, as well as your image list, avatar list, horizontal card list, horizontal chip list, and a custom list. So these are all different ways that you can show information or data within your app. And so you definitely want to check those out. And we can go into a little bit more detail into how to use these on another video. Here you have buttons, and there's a few different buttons that you can use. You can have a button, and within this button there's 3 settings that you can do. You can do one that's like this, which is a full-on button, an outline button, or you can do a text button, which looks like this. And then you have action buttons, which are these little floating icon buttons that go on the corner of your app. The next thing that you'll see is an icon. An icon can also be a button. So if you look on the screen, you'll see this trash can item, and that is an icon that can be pressed, which will trigger an action. The toggle is the last form of a button that you can apply to the screen. And so imagine these check marks being a toggle that you check and then something happens. So that is another very useful button that you can have. Simple is all the various simple elements that you can use to add to your screens. So you can have an image, you can have text. Those two are your most used ones, so they're going to be on top. Then you can add your ellipse, your rectangle, your line, vector drawings, or a web view. We'll get into this a little bit later once I have played with this a little bit more. Then you have your forms and fields, and you have a few options. You have date picker, drop down menu, form, text input, file picker, and image picker. So the two most used ones are going to be these two, and then everything else. Then you'll notice that you have a marketplace where you can kind of buy more components, right, to add to your project. And I would say add as many as you need, but never too much because it will slow down your app. So you just only want to add the ones that you need for sure for your app when you're building it. But you can, if you're an advanced developer, you can always go and create your own component. So we will go into that once I play with this a little bit more. But yeah, this is a marketplace of different components that you can add to your app to make it even more powerful. So I love that Adalo kind of gives you the basics to start with, and then you can expand upon this if you need to. And so for me, I've installed these four app components that I think are necessary in another build that I did. So it's a YouTube video, a multi-select dropdown, and a view more text. But I actually ended up only using these two. So that's just for reference. You definitely need less than you think you actually need. Okay, so let's go into screens. We already talked about each one of these. Let's go to database. Database is where you will actually use and store, create, delete, update anything that you have in the app. And to show you, each one of these is a database. And let's see. Each one of these is a database, and a database is going to contain all the information that runs the app. And if you assign an owner to your database, that means that only that person can see their information when you go to create that app, and make sure that you say only logged in users can see their own information. And so this is really helpful if you're creating, let's say, an onboarding app, or if you're creating anything where there's sensitive information that only one user should see their own information. That is where this kind of relationship is going to come into play. And it's basically a spreadsheet, and it contains all the information that you would need to run the app. And as you build out your collection, you can add property, which is going to be the fields that run along the top. And then your data is going to run along the bottom. This is a really quick intro into database. We'll talk more about it in another video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we're happy to kind of make that video for you. But you can do so much with the database collections. You can create statuses, you can create relationships, as we talked about, and you can also use a collection to create a drop-down, which is a little bit more advanced in terms of creating an app and doing all of that. So anytime you want to add a collection, you just click on add collection, give it a name, add, and then you can start creating new fields. So I'm just going to call this goals, let's say. Then you can add a property. You can select what property you want that to be. So I just want it to be a text field. So this is going to be a text type. And I'm going to say this is date complete. So a date that I would like to complete this goal. I want actions that I need to do. So that's how you would do your database collection setup. Anytime you see a number next to the records tab is how many records you have in that chart. So that is a little quick pro tip. And now we can go to settings. These three you won't use until you are ready to launch your apps. When you're building your app, you're only going to be using this big plus sign, the branding, the screens, and the database. And the screens is your front end, and the database is your back end. And settings, publish, and analytics are all after you have published. Even analytics is way after you have published and people have started using your app, that you can kind of come in and review that data. So don't worry about this part, but a really quick thing, when you are ready to publish your app, you want to go here and create your app icon. Make sure it follows this rule 1024 by 1024, and that you have a short description. This will go into the short description for submitting to Apple and Google if you choose to push the app to those two platforms. And down here is app access. So you can make sure that people can't clone this. You can generate an API key that will allow you to hook it to other apps so that your app in Adalo can interact with other apps. Again, that's another video, but this is where you would find it. And you can also copy and delete your app. So if you want to save a version of it, then you can create a copy and then kind of mess with that and then come back. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I think Adalo has set us up really well with all of these options, and so it's really cool to play with this. Now I'm going to go to publish. When you're ready to publish your app, you're going to start by doing a PWA, which is your progressive web app. When you're ready, you want to definitely click on add domain. You want to add your domain. You want to first buy your domain. And then what I found today is that you want to put a subdomain in front of your domain so that Adalo will recognize it. So you have to put app dot and then whatever your domain name is and do that. And then when you go into your domain service provider, you want to just follow the directions within that. Once you do a custom domain, there will be a pop-up screen that tells you what to do. It'll say host at name and then whatever name you want. So that's going to be app. And then you're going to do, I think, CNAME. And then from there, it will ask you to say for the TTL is 3,600, which is by default 1 hour. And then the name of the hosting is going to be hosting.adalo.com. And so once that connection has been made, you can just publish to your custom domain. And when you're ready, you want to reset your SSL certificate here, but you want to make sure that you wait a few hours before you do that. Okay. So this is a quick overview of Adalo and how to get started. I can show you a really quick app that I've been building for a client. And we're at the testing stage now. This is an educational type app where it's a workbook and there's a lot of content being given. And so this is basically like a journal / workbook where they would work through the sections to kind of learn how to build their own business. And you can see that, I'm gonna not zoom in because I don't want to give away confidential information, but you can see that there's a lot of screens and that there are all these little lines that connect to each other. So each of these mean an action, so they're linked to that screen. So anytime there's a button on a screen that you want to link to another screen, you can tell it to do so, and then when you make that update, Adalo will create a line and connect those two screens. So that's what this whole web of lines are for that you see here. And you can turn that on and off in your settings, I believe. Let's see, I think you can say settings, display settings, and you can say display screen connections, and you can take that away to make it clean, or you can keep it so that you can see how your screens are linked. And so that's a really quick pro tip here as well. And let's go to, if you need help with anything, their documentation is great to get started with, but you can also go to the forum to ask for help. I find their documentation super helpful, and yeah, so definitely check that out if you're in need of any assistance. They're super responsive. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you have any question, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and we will see you in the next video. If you're interested in other no-code tools, I made an introduction to Bubble as well, which you can view on the screen now, and we'll see you in the next one.